This assignment looks at how adaptive teaching helps provide stretch and challenge in arts and design education. First, I explain what adaptive teaching is, share some ideas, and describe why it's important in the classroom. I also talk about common challenges teachers face and ways they can help students grow. And then I describe how these ideas were used in my placements and supporting students, and then I finally reflect on how the theory connects with what I saw and practiced. So adaptive teaching is an approach where the student is at the heart of the process. Their unique needs, interests and starting points, and it means that a teacher needs to stay flexible and inclusive to adjust the content and pace in a way that works for each student, and formative assessment plays an important role. The teacher gathers ongoing evidence of understanding through questioning, observation and quick checks. And student support is scaffolded with just enough help to keep them moving forward. And above all, it's about encouraging students to take ownership of their learning. So learnings are often in the head, and what this quote means is that much of what students are thinking and understanding isn't really obvious to a teacher. So it's about bringing that thinking to the surface so it can be seen and supported and developed. So by making the learning visible, teachers helping the students learn how to learn, and this is often called self-regulation. And so if we want students to be able to plan and monitor and reflect on how they learn, Hattie suggests that we need to make space for self-regulation by teaching these skills explicitly. So an example of this in an observational drawing lesson is, you can see where a teacher's modelled the thinking aloud to verbalise the process, and then the student artwork evidences the planning, setting goals, and then making reflections at the end. So to make learning visible, a teacher can start by, being clear about where each student is in relation to the learning objective. So it's all about closing the gap between the starting point and where the learning objective is. So we've got to find out what the students know and how they think, and engage with ideas and use strategies. And this checklist is kind of useful. It's quite useful as a start point, even though yes, it's could be quite subjective, but it's just a start point to help a teacher see where a student is and where they might potentially need support for their learning. Teaching to a whole class, it's often overlooks individual needs, and true differentiation means understanding where each student is in their starting point and aiming just above that aiming instruction just above that, which you can see in the speech bubbles there. And it's sometimes called the +1 method, to keep the learning not too easy, not too hard, but just the right level of stretch, so that students keep progressing. Curiosity is sometimes called a knowledge emotion, and it's sparked when students become aware of the gap between what they know or can do and what they want to know or they can do. And as teachers, it's about tapping into that and give learning just enough intrigue without being overwhelming, so they feel driven to explore that. And Winnie and Hadwin show these stages of motivation which can help you as a teacher. Formative assessment is one of the most effective ways teachers can find out where students are in their learning. They don't want to wait till the end to find out how they're doing. You've got to give it to them during the process so that they've still got time to improve. That helps move the learning forward. And here are some examples of formative assessment that I've used in the art room, inspired by Debbie Light pedagogy, observation and feedback, self-assessment, and thumbs up and down. Those three I use a lot, and think, pair, share, but all of them I use regularly in the classroom. So how does adaptive teaching support stretch and challenge in art and design education? This quote kind of says it all, really. It reflects the spirit of stretch and challenge and believing in everybody's potential to grow. And when a teacher holds high expectations and sees all learners as artistic, creative, and innovative, they grow into that, and it really helps this student with ADHD with focus to encourage her exploration and and focus as well. So from small scale compositions, which were only like 2 or 3 weeks before the exam, she was kind of like at this level, and then suddenly in the exam she just produced this really big bold artwork and was exploring new techniques within the exam. It was really exciting to see, and she's super proud of her work, and so were we. So thinking grows from what we know. It does. To think deeply, we need to give students rich, meaningful content and real techniques to engage with. So, they can really make it their own. An example of this being when students explore the work of artists like Mark Hurd, they're not just looking at his images, they're learning from his use of texture, bold colour, collage, and his layering, and it gives them something really rich to respond to, and it means they can then answer really thoughtful questions like, why is he using these materials? What story is being told? And how can I use similar techniques for my own ideas? It makes the learning more meaningful to them and purposeful as well. So again, there's another table which I've put together, which is inspired by Debbie Light's pedagogy, which shows some stretch and challenge ways to apply it in the classroom. And we're really making sure that every student feels challenged and motivated and inspired to grow. How did I explore adaptive teaching in my placement? So I selected 2 students who'd already shown, I could have chosen a lot, obviously, and I chose 2 who had already shown creative spark in previous lessons, but I could see room for improvement there. And so I've got the first one, which is Shakina, and some untapped potential there. I did also refer to David George's book for this table on the right, Myself as a Learner, and like a checklist for signs of untapped potential, which was really useful. So there's some initial observations by me and school data. She seemed very self-sufficient, very creative, but also a little bit chatty. So I thought there was some things going on there that could be really good to work with. These are the ways that I felt like I could support her in the yellow box there. And with Liana, so that's another student, and again, untapped potential I saw, because she was often in her own private world, but ever so sweet, just a real cutie pie, and not quite engaged, but also when she's motivated and inspired, she could be really creative. So there was this kind of like, two different things going on there, or a few different things. So in the yellow box, the ways that, I can help her move forward in her learning, and just very interesting, again, using that myself as a learner. I think I'm going to use that across many student classes. It was so interesting to see. So here was the introduction to the project that we were doing. So starting with drawing and mark making, and then moving into monoprints, and then collages. And there's an example of what the collage would look like at the bottom left, inspired by Mark Hurd. So these are the observations that I made from some of the results. What have I got here? I've got Liana's observation. Let's start with Liana. Okay, Liana, I've got these back to front a little bit. So Liana's completed one really sensitive coloured pencil drawing with good observational skill and use of colour, but she seemed to be quite disengaged during lessons and needed prompting to stay focused. So she rushed through the monoprinting, but after giving her step-by-step feedback and encouragement to study the reference images more carefully, her final print showed much more thought and observation of mark making. And she used one of her prints for a final collage, and to encourage her engagement, I mentioned her love, or talked to her about her love of David Bowie, which really sparked her imagination. and she quickly became really confident with what she was going to do, like using sequin paper, and then she made this amazing like sound like waves behind the bird, which I thought was really innovative, and it really related to her love of music, and she looked really confident afterwards and said she was going to be more Bowie in her art afterwards. So yes, Shakina, she showed artistic potential in her bird drawings with interesting variations and composition. Good technical skill in the monoprinting, so she got this bird with lots of like movement in it, and then I gave her some targeted feedback about really observing the mark making in it, and then she had made this really beautiful bird on the right of that one. And then, when she was making her final collage, she took really bold creative risks. So she had this really lovely monoprint that she was working from, which is kind of underneath the head of that collage there. And she just completely removed the background, so that when I was giving her advice about, creating more contrast and tone, she just started using other materials and grabbed these magazines with textural things in them to kind of emulate the feeling of feathers. And I also asked her to support two classmates who were finding their designs challenging, and she gave really thoughtful feedback for that, which I thought was really amazing. And so if we look at go towards next, what have we got next? Evaluation and reflection. So how does the theory of adaptive teaching relate to my experience? Well, let's have a look. Shakina showed really early signs of ability, but what really grew her as a student, it wasn't just her talent, it was a chance to take on that sustained challenge. So really reflecting on her work, and she really took ownership of it, and which reflects the core idea in adaptive teaching, that expertise develops over time through really deep, meaningful engagement and not quick success. Also it raised the challenge of what was possible for her, because not just within herself and her artwork, but by supporting others, it will have deepened her learning, and because she had to articulate herself, and expanded her role in the classroom. So this experience wasn't just about recognizing her potential, it was about creating the conditions for her to release more of it through adaptive teaching and focus on growth. And then with Liana, she might not have been seen as one of the bright students, in a system where she's, has been labelled as less able on her pupil profile, a low prior retainer. It signals to teachers that low incomes are expected of her, and that kind of label can be helpful in a busy classroom of 30, because teachers, have a lot of needs to juggle. But it also set the bar low for her before she's got a chance to really show what she can do. And I love this quote at the top by Goethe, they treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they're capable of being. I think it's really appropriate here. So another couple of quotes which are, very poignant as well. And alongside this, Claxon and Meadows point out that children raised in homes that are rich in conversation and intellectual engagement and parental support often seem more bright at school, but it's not necessarily because they're more intelligent, it's because they've been skilled up through early exposure to learning behaviours. And a child like Laquina, who receives free school meals, might not have had those same opportunities. What she needs is more school-type learning and the kind of coaching that helps her access and engage with it, and get her more skilled up in the classroom. As a final note here, one of the key roles of teaching is to hold high expectations of students while offering the right support and opportunities. But it's really hard to do this in a really busy classroom with limited time and large classes, and it's quite hard to give these personalised approaches in the class we may think. But it's important to bring stretch and challenge in, and it can be built into every lesson with adaptive teaching. And even things like the questionnaires or the checklists, they are really super helpful for like a quick thing that teachers can look at as a starting point to help them, and throughout the term as well. So it just connects with this lovely Oliver Jeffers illustration that with the right mindset and tools, teachers can help students push past their self-doubt, take on new challenges, and realise what they are truly capable of. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope that it was enjoyable and interesting, and thank you for listening.